horse drifted alarmingly in the betting was, Fencer in the morning continued to drift. It was late on the exchanges to lose. It was something you'd see in a Dick Francis novel, Charles Buttons.
The ground is soft. It's
heavy.
It's soft on times.
It's heavy.
Okay.
And a very big warm welcome to the Bar Stewards Inquiry Sunday Sermon, where preaching with me this evening is John Lang from John Joe's Blogspot. Good evening, John.
Blessings be upon each and every one of us.
And last but not least, forgive me, but I have sinned. Lorne Malvo, welcome to the show, sir.
Very, very happy to be here, and no blessings from me to anybody.
Well, it's southern attitudes. Yeah,
Fuck you all. Yeah, that's my attitude. Yeah.
Spoken like a good Tory party candidate. Speaking of candidates, John's candidate that was mentioned on the show, was it last week, John, or the week before? I can't remember.
At least the week before, maybe the week before that even.
No,
that's it. I mean, I'm lost in space. 2 weeks ago. I'm lost in space when it comes to time at the moment. It's like one big floating bubble. But yeah, I mean, a great selection because Tom, I'd tug on that. I don't even know how to pronounce his name. I'm
Tom
terrible.
Tug on that, isn't it?
Tom Tug on that. He's now into, I believe, like around about the 8-1 mark for the old Tory Premier post. Nice bit of tip in that, John. You must be sat pretty on your 33-1 voucher.
I could do with getting paid out yesterday. That's the problem.
Would you be tempted if he come right in the betting? Say if he was like one of and he come right down in the betting. Would you be tempted for a layoff, or are you sticking this one out?
I might take a J out of him if he goes 4-6.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, if he comes firm favourite. So interesting times. If any of our listeners have taken John's advice, you sat pretty at least for now. Anyway, okay. On to yesterday's action, Saturday's, and it's fair to say that our panel on Friday evening weren't that impressed with the show, and neither was Jack, a good listener of our show. Jack JCC Punter says that what do you think? This has to be just about the worst Saturday's racing that he can remember. Any thoughts, John, that sort of stick out from Saturday? Where should we get started? Where should we start?
I'm just trying to think if I've ever seen a worse Saturday. There was a Newbury Spring Cup Day once when I was at a wedding, and I only managed to scrounge one bet up, but at least I did manage to scrounge a bet up. This was awful on Saturday, wasn't it? Absolutely awful. I mean, it was boring.
Yeah,
I think that's you've got the right word. Yeah, yeah. It kind of just didn't. It didn't want. I mean, apart from like the odd race, it didn't really want me to sort of participate and sort of get excited. And if that's all the national season has got to offer, if this is what we're going to do every single winter, where we just ponce about for between sort of October to February and just ponce about and mess about, and then finally it's all about Cheltenham. Well, I mean, as we know, it's all about Cheltenham from the very start of national season. People do podcasts on it. People talk about Cheltenham left, right, and centre. It literally is, I think, the most overfished concern, and I think that's the part that bores me. Everything's geared. Oh, what do you think to its chances at Cheltenham? It's like, well, why can't we talk about what do we think to its chances in its next race? Rather, it's just very, very odd the way the sport's gone. Do you agree with that, John?
Well, I think most of them, when you talk about discussing its chances in its next race, sadly, its next race is going to be bloody Cheltenham, isn't it? I mean, if they don't get their fingers out and do something with this programme, I mean, we're going to be needing a hell of a flat season because we're going to have to fuck off for 4 months.
It has been mentioned in the past.
On the profit.
Yeah. I mean, so what's the answer? What's the answer to create more trainers to basically, or have we got the horses? I mean, have we got the supply? I mean, looking at the Cheltenham entries in the graded.
Oh,
Yeah, we haven't got the ammo.
there isn't the ammo. There isn't the ammo to sustain the racing program. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so uncompetitive. You
Well,
know,
the Lingfield Millions, you know, there was racing 3 runners for 100 grand, you know.
it's just outrageous. You know, I mean, is Ralph Quinn still pulling the strings as regards the program and what have you?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I'm honestly not sure.
I mean, she's up there with Dido Harding in the mediocrity stakes, isn't she?
Yeah. I mean, does it come from that the Irish literally have got all the best stock and absolutely?
Yeah, I mean, no, it doesn't, because it could be our best stock running in competitive races. You know, I mean, they don't have to be rated 160 whatever. You know, if you get a dozen horses rated between 145 and 151, you've got a race, haven't you? You know, but there's too many opportunities. They're picking and choosing, and we're ending up with these 4-runner noddle rounds, and does nothing for it.
No, I mean, as a betting medium, it's not hugely attractive. But I think, you know, all the owners beefing about prize money, etc. I think there's a whole strata of owners at the very top of the game that don't give a shit about prize money. Because if they did, you know, you've got a 100 grand race where there's 3 runners. I think it's only people with moderate horses running around midweek that have got a legitimate concern about, you know, we're running a horse for 1,800 quid first prize and you have to win 5 races to break even, all that sort of business. But I think there's a certain section of the racing community that if you made prize money 50p, they'd still run for prestige. So I think prize money only affects certain owners. And I think there's plenty of owners that actually don't really care. They're not bothered by, it's 100 grand pot, and so what?
Yeah, and it's that prestige as well that's what Cheltenham's become. Whereas the flat season's got the flat season doesn't finish after Royal Ascot; it finishes after York. You know, we've got more ammo to basically create top class racing. Now, I'm not saying every festival we have during the flat season creates top class rating. Some can be quite disappointing. I think me and John touched upon the Ledger meeting, maybe cutting right down in terms of days.
You could pare that down to 3, maybe even 2 days, couldn't you?
You could really and make it quality. I mean, the bizarre talk about making Cheltenham 5 days is obviously just sheer money and greed. It cannot benefit racing at all. Cheltenham going 5 days, not in any shape or form. We have, I mean, unless the Irish will just bring over another battalion, and you know, we'll be left with Jamie Snowden at 50s.
Whatever you do with Cheltenham, I mean, Cheltenham is what it is now, isn't it? And you know, I mean, if you added 50 grand to the prize money for the Gold Cup, you wouldn't get an extra runner.
No, because that's not why people run horses at Cheltenham. They run it for prestige. I tried a Cheltenham winner, owned a Cheltenham winner, ridden a Cheltenham winner. Whereas if it's Wolverhampton or Kempton, then the prize money, the need for increased prize money is more acute because those horses, you know, have no real resale value unless you find one that you bought cheaply. So, for a lot of owners, they want to try and see not some return on their investment, but at least to cover the exorbitant expenses and training costs.
That's two different sports. They can't sell them, can they? I mean, Benny Hill hasn't got his milk round anymore.
No, that's quite right. Yeah, true enough.
Right. Anyway, we'll go back to sort of reviewing Saturday a little bit. And the Doncaster card was it was certainly more competitive in some ways than the Cheltenham Fair. But what really sort of angered me for Doncaster was the ground, and obviously they put the taps on, and it's the fact that it rode fairly dead for me. There were strung out like lines of wash. You know, if you've done the distance betting on the spreads, you know, you sat absolutely very, very, very on good terms with yourself. I mean, every single race, they seem to be absolutely knackered. You know, you watched every single. I mean, even the mares race. I mean, that was typical mare form. If ever you've seen mares try to be consistent. That the Miss Heritage is winning the in the mares hurdle there by, what was it, 15 lengths from a rival that's sort of £19 superior. All right, giving £6, but that sums up mares for me. And the fact that they were strung out like a line of washing says to me that there's something not right with the ground, because you can produce good to soft ground and not basically be tailed off turning for home. And I noticed a lot of horses that afternoon at Doncaster were sort of, I mean, the Sky Bet Chase, they were absolutely knackered. By the way, the Sky Bet Chase, I mean, it's a disgrace. It's the Great Yorkshire Chase, John.
How they can change the name or something like that is beyond me. I mean, Doncaster should have had something to say about that when they spoke to the sponsors. Disgusting.
I mean, Doncaster for me, and Doncaster are Arc, aren't they? Is it Arc?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're just sellouts, aren't they now?
Yeah. I mean, again, that race was attritional, and I know it was like running it was 9 seconds slower than the standard, which is good, but again, it's that type of ground that we've had debates on ground before. A lot of different pundits have said, heavy's heavy ground. That there are, I disagree that the ground for me, some heavies you can get through, some heavies you can't. Some good to softs are quite nice to go through. Some good to softs at this time of year are pretty cloy. It's all like clotted kind of ground, and I think we saw that at Doncaster, and to a degree, we also saw that at Cheltenham. Do you think, John?
Well, that ground at Doncaster was quite close to what you get in Whitby Harbour when the tide goes out.
Yeah.
I mean, that was about as much as it had in common with good ground.
I mean, it's like us going back to last summer, where we just frustrated most weeks when, and we're disheartened when a track says it's turning the taps on, because for a fact that 9 times out of 10 we're then moaning on a sermon saying, they've ruined it again. They've put too much on it. It times are 4 and 5 seconds slower than standard on the flat, when you're at the year where you should be getting good to firm, quick, nice, quick ground. And they're doing the same again, like at Doncaster, where I don't know it benefits really, but like I said, it's
benefits the Clark if he's playing on the distances.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's about it.
Yeah.
It's to nobody's benefit at all. I mean, if you're declaring good ground, trainers are expecting good ground, so if they've declared, they haven't got an issue. Why should you be watering it to good to soft to dead? It's ridiculous. But again, there's not a word of censure from those in authority. Nothing from the BHA on it. The horse race betters forum have been completely silent on it, as you'd expect. I mean, they're quick to claim credit for stuff all the time and write letters in if you ask a question of them. But situations like this, you can guarantee one thing, and that is they will not speak up.
No, they should be championing this on Twitter, using their platform. Quite a few people follow them, etc. And tweeting at the relevant people to tweet at, and like he says, emails, etc. It needs raising, and I don't think it's again fair on punters. Regards to some of the performances at Cheltenham Saturday, Pied Piper certainly got everyone stirred up. The Queen, what's she doing, John? Letting a potential Triumph Hurdle winner go. Well,
as soon as they get away from that Sandringham air, they seem to take them out.
They grow wings.
Oh, absolutely. The horse didn't look as though it had the potential to do that sort of thing, did it? But in fact, he seems to work the oracle. You probably wouldn't be betting against it winning the Triumph if it turns up there.
No. Time-wise, it was exactly the same, more or less, as Cormier. Old Dan Gilbert, winner for Dan Gilbert, loves a winner there. Good old Dan for Brian Ellison in the opener. Cormier won that, and like I said, the times are very similar, but Pied Piper doing it on the Billy Idol. Certainly, Was there any juice? Do you think there, Johnny? Do you reckon it's had the old Pete Doherty treatment? The way it come bouncing in there, it looked like Archibald and Isterbrack and some kind of rabid fevered beast on the running. Very, very impressive was Pied Piper.
I think the horse is secure with its immediate future. There's no danger of seeing a photo with Fatty sat astride it, is there?
No. Absolutely not. Imperial Alcazar got his jumping absolutely spot on as he annihilated the opposition in a rather fairly weak. I was surprised is his SP really, given his class. And but obviously the issue was his jumping, and he managed to destroy that field. Certainly, he'll be popular, I think, for a race at the Fez, whichever they're going to go for. Not really hard, which he won't win, but. Anyway, Torn Frayed won the Grade 3 handicap. I couldn't have the horse after he completely pounced it. I can remember the run at Ascot earlier in the year behind Favois, and Favois must have hit 6 fences. He was giving Torn Frayed £9, and he still, and Torn Frayed had the easy lead, and Favois still picked it off. And I thought that was a disgraceful piece of ponting from Torn Frayed, and yet Torn Frayed powered up the hill yesterday.
5-1 favourite.
Yeah, somebody knew. I didn't.
On the plus side, from 2 out, it only had 9 to beat, and we know what happens to my selections at the minute.
Yeah, you can stop trains at the moment. You can really put the mockers on things, but as myself included, John, it's a tough winter for us on the road to Doncaster.
I could stop Liz Truss taking a £500,000 jolly. I really could.
You like that £500,000 playing for?
I do really, yeah.
It's worth it. It's taxpayer funded £500,000 flight.
If she ever meets PM, she'll get her own hat. It'll have charter flight.
Yeah, with its own car. Yeah, like you said, learning off the jelly bean. So yeah, I mean, pretty uninspiring day's racing. Chantry House. Again, that's $1 million in it to win a Gold Cup.
The state of them in that race. I mean, Right went from going okay to paddling, didn't it? Almighty. Shocking stuff.
Well, the 11-year-old Cauto Rico must have hit about 14 fences. And that's rated 139. It's 11-year-old, and it was beaten 10 lengths. Yeah. Right? So as a handicapper, and I can guarantee you, in fact, looking at the Racing Post ratings now, they've given Chantry House 167, which is £7 above its official rating.
I say that, Cauto Rico, 152.
152. So suddenly, Cauto Rico has just he's in the form of his life, and he's ran probably a career best.
After knocking the shit out the fences. Fantastic.
Yeah, after making lots of mistakes. So, yeah, I can see that rating standing up. And again, this is the problem we have. We've got nobody that can rate a race, really, including his own handicappers. Every winner's got to have run above its mark every time. And it's just a mental way of doing things. But
that winner's hit about 130 there.
Yeah. And then the most... Yeah, I mean, if you say that let's give Cauto Rico his marks. I mean, if it comes out 139 Cauto Rico,
he's near his mark, has he? He's clobbered the fences, and
yeah,
that's mental.
Chantry House would be running about the 154, 153, which I think's about right, because he never looked happy. He was he looked beat at one point. He was shoved along. I mean, if he does that in the Gold Cup, I think he's getting to the stage where he can't be bothered. They've put pieces on him. They clearly think he's getting a bit lazy and what have you. So, yeah, 154. I'd say Chantry House. No chance in a Gold Cup. Absolutely none. Nil. You've heard it here first. And the last time I did that was Catherine Fry when she tipped up Frodon in the King George, and that won at 25s. So we'll move on. And then we came to the Cleve Hurdle. which again they were in running punters slitting the wrists and declaring that bankruptcy after Paisley Park whipped round at the start, gave Champ a free 15 start, and then sprinted up the hill and beat him. Thoughts about that?
Chimp's fucking shit, though, isn't it?
Yeah, agree with that. That was desperate, wasn't it? God, what a horrible race.
But I mean, like, again, I ask people that, you know, how do you handicap these things? Because, you know, Lisnagar Oscar were pulled up behind Champ last time. He's not really run a race all season, and again, that was only beat 6 lengths, you know, by Champ. So has Champ ran his race? Probably not, because Paisley Park can't give it 15 and beat it comfortably. Who'd have an anti-post betting stayers hurdle? It looks like the most difficult race ever to be involved in. You're looking at that.
Well, at least Robes got it wrong, didn't he, in running? He said he'd pull up and head back to the winners circle when they were going out for the first time. And you know, round the bottom bend, he said, well, he can't win, he might as well pull up.
Yeah.
I wonder if some of the in-running punters had listened to Robes.
Well, there'll be some slit in the wrist for sure, because you know, you're struggling really to sort of. I mean, I could imagine the shrewder ones will have been laying Paisley Park as it's coming to challenge Champ and try and, you know, obviously lay it around even money 6-4, thinking, well, it's giving it 50, it's going to flatten out surely. You know, and then
it didn't flatten out as much as Chimp, did it?
No,
that looks soft to me. That looks a real soft horse, I think. I agree. Even when Paisley Park was challenging, I think, well, having forfeited all that ground at the start, it's going to run out of petrol. But I thought Chimp just folded up. So I think it's got a heart the size of an ant, I think, personally. Yeah.
It's got old Chimp. And so, I mean, we come on to a bit of a sore talking point from the weekend as well, and the horrific sight of good old stick Midnight Shadow, I'm afraid, departing this world. And it was kind of a horrific thing to see. But again, all it does to me, just trying to look at things logically, is that when they eventually come for racing, and they will do again, make no mistake, they're coming for gambling, so they're coming for racing, right? The one concession that racing might have to make has to be jump racing. It's simply, it really is a tough sport. You know, there's horses that have to have years off for tendons. There's horses. It's a tough game, and you know, anyone in the game knows this. It's a great sport, and these are what they're bred to do. It's a brilliant spectacle at times, but obviously when things like this happen, it's harder to defend, John.
I used to love jump racing, Lee, from being a kid.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I grew up in like the Red Rum era when the national offences were fucking terrible, in all fairness. You know, they were like brick walls. And I love jump racing. The older I've got, the less I've liked it, to be honest. And a lot of it is the thought that you can say things like you say yesterday, and I mean that was one of the worst I've seen, to be honest. That just looked fucking awful, you know. I mean, there's no words for it. Yeah, you know. I mean, you can't justify it really.
No, I mean, look, like you, I've been a massive fan of jumps racing ever since I was little. In fact, probably jumps racing was the first thing that got me into the sport. You know, as a youngster, I mean, one of the first races I can remember as a youngster was, you know, sort of that era. Was it Night Nurse and things like that?
Night Nurse, Montrail, right?
Yes.
Captain Christie and Brown Lad were my two favourite horses.
Yeah, and then it went on to Desert Orchid, and I were a massive. Every time Desert Orchid ran, if I was at school, sometimes I'd bunk off and I would stand in the doorway, even listen to commentary if they hadn't got pictures. Yeah. that's how much I was a fan of Desert Hawkey when he was running, and I think, but now as the game's gone on now, it's changing times, isn't it? I mean, you know, we're in a society now where we like to think we're more developed, but we're more about control, and we're more about preventing harm. Not, you know, oh, that's not cricket, things like that. And if they did come for racing, it's very hard for even any trainer, anyone, to argue that national hunt racing, even over the whip, because the thing is, I mean, the whip's the first thing they actually might come for because it's the most obvious. But as we know, they always come for the Grand National every year, and they always, you know, it's not any other race, but they always come for the big major jump races, especially if there's casualties. And racing's has done a lot, and they've definitely made the Grand National safer. I didn't think they would, because I thought they'd go faster with the smaller fences. I'm happy to have been proven wrong, because there's been no fatalities in the Grand National now for over 8 years, which I think's a tremendous achievement, you know, by all concerned. But even so, you really are struggling to defend it. Do you agree with that, Chris?
Yeah, I do. I do actually. I've really got nothing sort of to say against all that. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I think you bang on.
If something's got to go, it will be that. That's you know, I'm not that I want it to go, and I hope listeners aren't thinking, oh, I'm being negative and saying, oh, he don't want national hunt racing. That's not true. I think it should all be left alone, and we should carry on. I'm just saying that I'm trying to look from the logical angle of outsiders that me and John loathe, trying to interfere with the sport, and who the BHA always try to appease, which I think is even worse. Coming in, that's surely something they're gonna have a go at. I'm just trying to preempt what's coming, and it will come. The day will come when they're going to be. It won't be lobbying for single customer view and affordability checks. They're going to be lobbying for the abolition of national hunt racing. That will happen, 100%. So yeah.
I think what might be an idea, you know, given the fact that there hasn't been enough fatalities in the national, why not transform national style fences to all the other courses? Because they're clearly taking a lot less jumping.
Well, I mean, like you said, I mean,
plastic cars now, haven't they, in there?
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe it's the I don't know. I don't know enough about it to comment and say yes, it's because of this, that, and t'other. But the stats say, you know, and the Grand National was always down for a fatality every year, just about. There'd always be a fatality in the National. That because you speak to owners, some owners won't even run in the National because they just won't risk the horses. That's how it used to be. I think that the £1 million for the race now has persuaded a few to change that view, and obviously the safer. They have made it safer, and I said years ago it would be worse because you think they'd go quicker because if the fences don't take as much jumping, you go faster. But anyway, one other thing on weekends racing, because of the wind, the drone lads that put up the pictures for the fasting running pictures for people to bet on in play, well, they couldn't get the drones up in the air. It's too windy. And I noticed one or two comments on Twitter. Martin Hughes was one of them, saying it was the fairest in running betting he'd known for a long time, because obviously no one, they probably sent no one to the tracks. There was no drone pictures. It was literally like betting off a video feed, and he said it was fair. And I just found that interesting. That again, this is the idiocy though. They allow sort of gangs to go around with drones filming racing when they could literally take it in house and make the money themselves. Do we agree, chaps, that this is not very forward thinking from both racing and the tracks? Whoever's got the picture rights should be thinking we'll make more money ourselves rather than illegals take our pictures off us. What are we saying?
That would require a commercial mind and a degree of foresight, which we aren't blessed with in this sport.
No.
I mean, the sport tends to be run by either extremely wealthy people who have lost, if they ever had it in the first place, the desire to adopt a commercial approach because they're very, very wealthy, or it's run by professional administrators. Effectively civil servants who have no experience of, nor have any desire to adopt a commercial, pragmatic approach. So, when you get a combination of people that don't need to make money, working alongside people that don't know how to make money, this is the result. You're not going to get that because you've got the wrong sorts of people in the game. And that's the thing. We've all often talked about, you need a Barry Hearn type, but you sort of do. Whatever people think of him, is and was a very commercial person. But the people running the sport currently, they don't have that skill set because they've never had it.
I mean, like boxing promoters, like Eddie Hearn, Bruce Fury's one, the American one, Bob Arum.
Yeah.
They're all
Don King.
Don. That's what racing needs.
But you need more hustle. I mean, although Don King's always got an extreme example, you do need people with hustle. And, these people that have senior positions in racing, they move from one administrative job to another, whether it's, Team GB or British Cycling, whatever, they are professional administrators. They are not commercial people. I mean, look what the Premiership's done. I mean, we were talking about that before the call started. That's a good example how that's been transformed in the last sort of 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and do you remember, like I said, the football chairman I'm sure his 80s or 90s, it might have been mid 80s or early 90s, and they wanted, and it were BBC used to screen live matches and ITV, whoever, on a Sunday afternoon. They wanted it banned because they said it affected attendances. And I mean, again, the lack of foresight back then, I think racing shows that now. There's so many commercial opportunities that they're passing up day in, day out. And they just want, they're doing exactly the same. They just want to stop the drone players. They've tried the police. They've tried all sorts to get them stopped. Well, why not think, well, they're not going to stop. They're never going to stop. So why don't we, get our fingers out here and make some serious money and put them out of business?
Yeah, the drone players themselves have identified a commercial opportunity. So if the tracks step up, they can scale it up and say, right, we'll have that. Thanks very much. You are, I suppose, in industry terms, you are disruptors, right? So in the tech sphere, you get a small little startup company doing something really innovative, causing a few waves, and you get sort of Apple or Microsoft say, cheers for that, we'll have that off you. Thanks for that. Have some money in using the tech example, but we're going to take that forward. So the equivalent would be the track's going, well, we'll do that. Then the drone players are straight away out of business. No need for them.
Indeed. Yeah. Indeed. Catherine Fry spotted a nice horse today. Obviously, it was fairly obvious at the prices, but the way it won today, any harm is asking. Up at Sedgefield. If anyone's watched that, or if you haven't watched it, go and watch it. I genuinely thought before the race this horse was probably a 145 plus horse. It was 127, I think, today at Sedgefield. Absolutely made mincemeat of them. Ridiculous. I know it was an ordinary race, but it was laughing at them. It was just absolutely grades and grades above. You'd say on back of that, I'd say 145 to 150. And it'd be interesting to see where they target it next, because I think John Joe O'Neill mentioned after the race that they were considering the Imperial Cup. Now, that's interesting because the horse dives a bit to his left. And he wants to go that way. He always wants to go to the left a little bit. And I'm just thinking that right-handed Sandown may not suit. That wouldn't be my choice if I owned it. So I hope John Joe doesn't go there if you fancy backing any harm in he's asking. That ran at Sedgefield this afternoon if you haven't seen it. One of the topic I'd like to touch on, which is not reviewing the racing, but what happened in the last week. Mick Easterby, he was involved in a BHA inquiry, and obviously Mick was totally admonished, which is rightly so in this instance. Neil Waggett and Stephen Walker, two racecourse employees of Newcastle, got warned off for 10 years for doping Ladies First, which was a very bad drifter on the exchanges. They refused to part with their phone records and their betting account record. They basically refused them point blank to speak to them. So they were warned off for 10 years. John, a question I'd like to put to you on this is that should they not be warned off for life or something like this? Should the police not be involved with this? It's aching to. They've been filmed doing it. They've been filmed administering the old substance to the horse on the security cameras, right? So the security cameras have done the job, unlike Charles Burns, and yet these fellas can come back into racing in 10 years' time, and with no police. If I commit false accounting, or if I go in a post office and steal money, I'm going to do prison for it. Why are these? So these people, like I said, have clearly doped a horse with the intention of, and I'm sure the police could obviously make them give the phone records up. Surely, that's the difference. The police could surely go into the phone records. So why is this not happening, John?
Well, for me, to get to the nitty gritty of this, those running the sport need to be speaking to the police and making it clear that anybody doping a horse to be any less than at its best on a given day is also technically putting a jockey's life at risk, because they aren't forced to know what they're giving, to what extent, dosage-wise. They could cause a heart attack mid-race, the jockey could get planted, whatever.
Exactly.
So, I mean, it's very dangerous before you even take into account the fact that it's obtaining money under false pretences as well, because if you're laying a horse with that sort of knowledge, basically you're having some poor bastard's pants down, aren't you? So, again, it's fraudulent, it's dangerous. There's enough there for the police to be involved. Why the BHA don't seem on top of it? Well, we know why they're not on top of it. They're arseholes, aren't they? But, there's so much in this sport they need to get their arms around, isn't there? Just so much.
Yeah.
I mean, the police probably don't fancy it. I mean, I'd be amazed if the BHA didn't refer the matter to whatever constabulary the course is under. They've been burnt before, haven't they? I mean, they had the one with the Charlie Brooks thing and the Fallon thing, and the sense that I get is the police just don't fancy that kind of investigation, particularly as it involves betting and it's complicated. And I know you've got prima facie evidence of people administering substances. I just don't think the police are resourced to do it, and I don't think the BHA, as you say, pushed them hard enough. But I don't know. I just don't think the police are up for that kind of thing. They should be, but I don't think they are.
I'm just relating to Mick Easterby never got fined.
He did, a penny. He asked for time to pay, I understand. He said,
that poor bastard in America that keeps sending him ribs of beef and things because he sees the videos on Facebook and thinks he's skint.
Yeah.
Down
his last 50 million, isn't he, poor bastard?
You'd have probably been sending him a Cadillac or something,
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, God.
No, but to me, I mean, it shows you what a free for all. All these. Remember when Betfair did a memorandum of understanding with sports, and they said that they're allowed to see betting records, this, that, and the other of anyone's account that's doing whatever. Well, what use has that done?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, has any criminal proceedings ever been brought to anyone that's clearly been fraudulent in this time? No, none. So it's a complete waste of time, and it's basically advertising that this is a free for all. And I'm certain you know, chaps, if you know there's a shoplifter, they haven't committed one offence. Shoplifters are never caught on the first offence. No. Shoplifters are caught after being too greedy and after time when people wise up to how they're doing it and how they're getting away undetected. Now, this is the thing. So how long has this been going off for? Right, this is not a one-off, and I see this a lot. And Rainy Day Woman to me is another prime example. Ran at Lingfield on the Millions Day, and she ran absolutely terrible, was tailed off, and she was found to have an irregular heartbeat. But again, the market seemed to know she was a horrendous drifter. She was putting on the tissue something like 11:08. She was out about sixes.
Yeah.
I mean, so someone knew, somewhat, so, you know,
criticise it, and people say, "Oh, you know, talking through your pocket, sour grapes. How many winners have you ridden?" But you know, it does go on, and the market is a fantastic guide. You know, it's not infallible, but it's infallible when it comes to horses that aren't going to win. In terms of, you know, because they've been, you know, they're going to be stopped or they've been given some gear. You know, it's an infallible guide. The market knows every time. And when you know, talk to people on Twitter who claim knowledge of how the BHA police the sport, you're laughed at. You know, moaning punters, don't know what you're on about. We dig into all these cases and nothing to see here. And that's patently not true.
Yeah. No, totally agree. And this is where I genuinely think that all this, I mean, James Moore, the BHA, the security officer, the betting security officer, this is where I think they're all, what's he getting paid for? If they're bringing no one to task, if they bring in no one like you know, to Judgment Day, what is the point of their positions? There ain't none. If all we're going to do, like you say, Chris, is sit back and go, well, have you got any concrete evidence? Well, I'm not sat in the living room while they're pressing pink, or I'm not privy to the private phone calls when they've been told that this has had the old reverse juice put in today, and you know, will you take a few quid out for me? I'm not privy to those calls, no, but it's certainly worth investigating and looking at. And like I said, just to say that the horse has had an irregular heartbeat with a betting pattern like that, I think is very damning. And obviously in a big race, so I mean, there's no question that connections are going to think, hang on a minute, let's do this to Ready Day Woman. Let's make sure we can take a few quid out on the machine. How are they going to do that when it's the prize money was really good? It was, what was it, 40 grand mares race. You're not gonna then go, well, I know, let's take 5 out of her on Betfair or 10 out of her on Betfair. What's the point? So you know, you may as well rule that out, that there's any connection skullduggery. It's more likely external. And again, you point to these needle people at Newcastle Racecourse, employees, and who's to say it's not going on elsewhere? And there's a big network of these people operating in gangs. Who knows? It might.
It's inconceivable, isn't it, that it isn't happening? It's, you know, when you look at when sort of Irish racing and US racing came under the spotlight a few months ago about, you know, performance enhancing drugs, you know, and everyone's sort of tutting and pursing their lips. You know, we're being asked to believe that we are one of the few jurisdictions in the world that's completely clean. That's simply not the case. Human nature dictates that it is going on, and it's being missed.
I just failed to see. I mean, in Hong Kong, you've had it. If you're found guilty in Hong Kong of doing any of this, you've finished, and you're in prison. But for some reason, you know, whatever our laws are, it seems impossible to be able to prosecute someone that can fraudulently take tens of thousands of pounds from a medium like a betting exchange. But yeah, like I say, if you rob a post office, you're going to do double figures in, especially if it's armed robbery, which usually happens for post offices, and you know, you're going to do prison time. So it makes no sense. It's just absolutely.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I suppose it's about the way in which the BHA are resourced to police the sport. I'm sure they haven't got as many bodies as they wanted, and obviously notwithstanding whether they're the right people to do it. You've got the police that just not that interested. I mean, I've got some experience of it, and you know, as soon as you mention betting, you know, unless people know about the sport, you know, they're very, very. It's very technical to the outsider, and they are just not that keen to deploy resources and public money on investigating this kind of fraud when there's much lower hanging fruit they can do elsewhere. And you know, there are loads of frauds that just aren't investigated. And there was something on Radio 4 the other day where people have been scammed out of millions of pounds, and you know, the police went, a bit too difficult, leave it. And you know, I think that's the way of the world. But I suppose with Hong Kong, you know, in terms of security, you know, it's less disparate than the race courses in this country. You know, it's much more kind of tightly controlled geographically as well, you know, in terms of the stables being on track, etc. But you know, look, at the end of the day, I just don't think there's a huge appetite to do much about it, and you're going to catch one or two, but God knows how many get through. You might be surprised; it might be more prolific than anyone, you know, dares to think.
Gives credit for, yeah. I mean,
Totally.
well, everyone knows.
I think it's pretty prolific.
I mean, it's the thing is, if you do it, I'll give you an example. Let's say you do it once, and you know these guys at Newcastle Racecourse, and you say, right, do this. We can take a right few quid out. It's a success. It's a roaring success. You've took 15,000 out on the machine. You split the profits. You do. Yeah. You don't stop at one, do you?
No.
It's natural human nature. It's greed. It's if you found an edge, you go, right. We'll go again. We'll pick right race. We'll pick right course. We'll do whatever. You know, and you go again. And it's that's how it works. That's how life works. So
I remember once speaking to a very, very financially successful and prolific importer of controlled substances who eventually got nicked. And I said to him, you know, you've got like fucking 50 million quid. Why the fuck are you still doing it? And he turned around. He said, look, would you turn down winning the lottery every week? He said,
exactly.
You know, that's the mentality. If you haven't been caught, then you kind of get lulled into a false sense of security that you're never going to get caught. And it's Bank of England money every week. So carry on. Let's just do it. So maybe that's the attitude that prevails.
I mean, ever since the days of like Brian Wright and paying the jockeys and Graham Bradley and you know, and like he got all the jockeys under his wings and you know, who's to say we're not here again with that now with something different, like whether it's substances. There's lots of things. I mean, look, I don't want to turn it into this all racing's bent, but clearly, you know, there's a degree or part of the sport that's you know difficult to believe sometimes, and it obviously where there's money and there's edges, people are going to take advantage.
It's human beings, you know, and the opportunity to get a few quid. You're a trainer, let's say, on the bones of your arse. You're going to struggle to train more than maybe half a dozen winners a year. And if you do, well, you know, you have to be absolutely bang right when you have your bet and et cetera, et cetera. It's a lot easier to get something at the front of the market and say not today. It's a lot easier.
Yeah. Gentlemen, have you any other points of view to add from either anything you want to discuss or to touch on?
No, not really. I think we've covered more or less everything there.
Yeah, we've gone through a fair bit. Just one final thing to finish on then. There's been a report out this week from the APBGG, which is the All-Party Parliamentary Betting and Gaming Group, led by MP Scott Benton. And basically, this is reporting on the Gambling Commission. And it was very, very damning. I haven't read the full report. I've skim-read a lot of it. And I can tell you now that it's very damning on the regulatory body. It accuses them of bullying. To be fair, it read like it was written. It read like it read like it was written by Jeff Banks. Old Jeff. Honestly, I was reading it in Jeff's voice for the first 7 pages. I'm thinking this sounds like Jeff wrote this. It just sounds like it is everything. It like put it this way, Jeff will love this report because the one thing the report suits is independent bookmakers. It's quite damning against the bigger boys, and it's quite damning against the Gambling Commission in that, obviously, with the sharing of data, you know, very invasive data. As I said, basically, they've accused the GC of also bullying bookmakers. Somebody wants to get at that? To bullying bookmakers into complying with these regulations. So the GC will come in and say, right, you need to do more to stop potential money laundering and et cetera, and or you need more affordability checks to protect problem gamblers. And the bookmakers are very fearful of being fined a lot of money if they don't comply. It's as if they're making the rules up as they go along. These aren't regulations. These are just regulations made up by this quango, if you like. And basically, there's a lot of people that are doing separate studies out there that are basically stating that the data that they're taking off you is going to a third party and has been sold on. The private financial data. This is incredible. And these are amazing revelations. If there's any legal beagles out there, I'd like to hear from you on this to see what dodgy ground, because this is how we can overturn the SCV, single customer view checks here. Because if these bookmakers are up to no good in terms of using this data for ill-gotten gains, for example, Paddy Power could say, get your data, demand your data. It goes to a third-party data center, say in Leeds. Unibet can then apply to that data center in Leeds and get your data. So it's in a way single customer view is already here. But I'd love to hear from a legal beagle on this, and I'm certain I'm going to be setting a pod up, probably try and get Jeff on to discuss, or whoever really, to basically go through this report, because it is very damning that the regulator for the sport and it is behaving like this. And secondly, they have no concept of what harm they're going to do to the actual racing industry. They're only interested in gambling harm. It's one-dimensional. It's gambling harm, everything else cast aside. Any thoughts, chaps, on the Gambling Commission? By the way, I was very upset at Dave Yates's comments this morning on Nick Luck, who defended the Gambling Commission, said that this report was not needed. Incredible.
Bizarre.
Yeah, just let Calvin loose on him.
I mean, yeah, send Turn into battle. Yeah, like a bare chest. I could see Calvin turning up bare chested, beating his chest as he approaches Dave Yates in his pink Thomas Pink shirt. I could just see that scenario. As long as Dave's got the right attire on, Dave would be all right. But anyway, anything? So we've touched on everything. Anything else to add before we wrap up?
No.
No. Just congratulations to JP for his 4,000th winner.
Oh, piss off!
Hip hip hooray!
How many non-jiggers? How many non-jiggers, John? How many non-jiggers?
20,000.
Oh, you horrible people! He puts a lot into the game. Have a bit of respect, honestly. God damn it!
Catherine Fry loves him. Anyway, that's us going to wrap up. We're back on Friday. Catherine Fry, I believe, is here for a second stint. John's, allowing. Yeah. So Catherine Fry's back. It'll be, I'm trying to think, lineup. It'll be Richmond, John, and probably Adam Norman or me or whatever, really. We just make the numbers up. But we're back on Friday for the Dublin Racing Weekend and everything else that goes on with those Irish gypsies deciding which horses.
Just eye candy.
Which is deciding which horses are going to be winning at Dublin in comparison to winning at the festival. All the fun of the fair as the Irish gypsies gather at Leopardstown next weekend. That's all from me, John, and Chris tonight. We hope you enjoy the show. Bye for now.
Right, the show's over, boys. Thank you very much.